Welcome back to Murder House Inc., where last week on episode 1 we spoke about the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez and his exploits. We went deep into the psychological, sociological, and cultural perspectives on what it may have contributed to his reign of terror. But this week, we're going to take a step back here, and we're going to get away from the mainstream serial killers and go into someone that some of you may have remembered or may have heard of, but Philip Markoff was known as the Craigslist Killer. And his case is a bit unique, and I'll explain why as we go further into the storyline here, but give you some background here. So Philip was born on February 12th of 1986. Actually came from a good family, which was his father was a dentist and his mother was stay-at-home mom. Apparently had a decent childhood, which was active in sports, social, and he aspired to be a doctor. He had a great relationship with his older brother and half-sister. So as you're already kind of listening to this, you're like, well, it doesn't seem like the typical background of a serial killer. And I just want to quote. So he actually only got accused or convicted of one murder, but there was some other murders that happened that had some similarities to the murder he had conducted, right? So they were unsolved, and as far as linking him to it, there was just a lack of evidence, right? So later on in his life, right, he ended up meeting his wife, Megan McAllister, and they had been interning at the Albany Medical Center. I guess they were both working in the emergency room. Prior to, the murders, she believed that he was like a good person, right? Nothing out of the ordinary, no red flags. They really planned to get married eventually. So Philip was attending actually Boston University of Medicine when he was accused of the crimes. It came as a shock to not only his family, but the entire community. No one believed that he was capable of committing such terrible crimes, and many people advocated for his innocence. So the initial crime was 1 count of murder and 3 counts of robbery. Mainly his victims were scouted through Craigslist, so hence the Craigslist Killer. And most of them were escorts. So I believe that he would follow up on some of the ads that were like for quote unquote massage, erotic massage. And even though that was something out of the ordinary for him, it kind of drew back to this whole was this guy living a double life, right? I mean, over here playing doctor, and then on the other hand, you're seeking sexual exploits through Craigslist, right? So when police were able to match the emails to his apartment, the blood on his shoes, to match the DNA that was one of the matched to the victims, security cam footage, it was only a matter of time before people started to kind of rethink their stance on his innocence. I mean, they were like, wow, could this dude really be capable of committing such crimes, such heinous crimes? So, as I mentioned earlier, Philip didn't have any, abusive relationship, right? He wasn't beaten by his dad or his mom. Wasn't torturing animals or any of the more stereotypical factors that most serial killers have. So I really had to dig deep on this one and really do some research on him, and which led him to live this double life. One thing that I clued into was a report by his fiance. Now, apparently they were living off student loans, okay? He wasn't able to work due to school. I am aware that being in med school is you do residency, externship, all this other stuff, right? So it's taken away from actually making money. And she was unemployed. I mean, they were struggling financially. And I asked myself, well, could the stress have manifested into some explosive fits of rage? Or was this just some fire burning inside him take the life of innocent people? I don't know. I really don't. And I come back to that question, right? Because we talk about this nature versus nurture, was he born this way, or was he conditioned over time to relinquish all this anger onto people of lesser power, right? So when you think about, these escorts, right? In his mind, right, maybe his rationale was, well, they're escorts, they're prostitutes. No one's going to care if, they get murdered or someone robs them. What are they going to say? Oh, I was meeting up with some guy to give him a quote-unquote erotic massage, but then I got robbed. I mean, obviously it was all premeditated. I truly believe that it gave him the power in which he didn't feel he had in his normal life. He controlled his victims, which allowed him to feel pleasure and release this tension. He saw these women as expendable since their line of work was not much publicly accepted by social norms. I believe the robbery kind of made more sense to me because of maybe the financial burdens he had, but also that taking a token of them, right? Like some souvenir, right? A notch on his belt. I do not believe that there was something brewing for decades, though. It was his curiosity that led him to act on these deep-rooted secret obsessions. They became so overwhelming, and when the excess stress from school, finances, and internal demons, he caved in to those obsessive thoughts. In most cases, the type of sadomasochism is often used to increase pleasure during sexual intercourse. But I think in Philip's case, it crossed the line or boundary in which it was not consensual. Philip may have wanted to live out this secret desires on these complete strangers so that he couldn't be judged opposed to his conservative background. It allowed him to explore a life that he was unable to achieve due to potential expectations that his family had for him. You think about where he came from, right? His, good upbringing, and imagine saying one day, hey man, I like to beat people and rob them, and that's how I get my rocks off. Wasn't exactly the picture perfect lifestyle. I can truly say this man was not your average criminal. In fact, he was very sloppy in his work as he left clues that allowed detectives to catch him. I don't believe he wanted to be caught for some type of fame or possible recognition like, some serial killers do eventually, right? Some do want to get caught and want to get that notoriety, right? Or, but I'm sure he was conscious, about what he was doing, and there may have been something he had inside of him that he never shared with anyone, and unfortunately we'll never be able to find out because while, he was being convicted, and he actually killed himself. Eventually he took his life, and that was pretty much the end of it. Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in into episode 2, and if you have any questions, I also want to hear back from you guys, right? Like, what do you think happened? What made this a lot different from serial killers like the others we talked about? Jeffrey Dahmer. What made this guy kind of go Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing, right? This alter ego. Share your opinions, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Thank you for tuning in on Murder House Inc.